So the first thing that I just like to do is make sure people are aware that grading policies are actually located on the STIC website. And is it going to let me actually click on that link? There we go. So we actually have on the STIC website a gradings policies page. So this is actually where the grading system is, and it gives you the actual breakout. Now, the reason that I share this with you is that this is the grading system that is placed into Blackboard by Scott Lambert. So the system actually automatically knows what the STIC grading system schema is, and it's already placed into Blackboard. And you're able to see it, and I'll show it to you where it is. But I usually tell people just to confirm with themselves is to go in and look at that it matches. It looks different than this column, but that's just to let you know that that's where the grading system comes from in Blackboard. And then additionally, as you know, grade changes, incomplete grades, anything like that, I usually just direct students to this as well so that they're familiar with that so that they know. And then I'm going to put in the chat right now that link in case you want that for any reason. Let me find our chat window. There we go. So this is in there. So that's the link to this page. I just cover that really, really quickly. Then the next thing that I want to kind of get into here, and I'm just going to go back down to my little slide, is we just are going to talk a few minutes, besides being in Blackboard, is talking about grading strategies. And so what I normally say to people is, make sure that before you get into Blackboard, as I mentioned, that you think about your grading strategy. Now, all of you are experienced faculty, so you think and you develop this out. But one of the biggest things about doing grading in general is that you kind of have to have how you're articulating this to the students. What is your point value? Are you doing it on what we call like base 10 or 10 numbers? So like everything is worth 100 points or 10 points, and then you're going to place weight on it. Or are you doing something where you're kind of saying something's worth 20 points and something's worth 80 points? That means that you're kind of already weighting the grades before you get to the, the total of the class. So you're making certain things way more, which means you don't have to apply a second weight to it. So there's a variety of different things. And also when you're talking, I think what Sheila knew was know the maths of the thing, is that I think a lot of times math gets confusing for some faculty on how to do things like weighting, and that there's a lot of colleagues out there to make sure that they can help you out with that. When you're going to do your grading in Blackboard, you want to make sure you have all your assignments, discussions, quizzes, and participatory activities already created in Blackboard before creating your grade calculations. This prevents missing items and errors in calculation. What that means is that if you didn't put your final exam in your grade calculations, your students throughout the semester are going to think that that's their grade continuously. And then when you add that final grade at the end, it will drop the grade significantly, and that'd be confusing to students. What the Grade Center does is it knows the point values of every single thing, and it can actually give the students a running total or a total up to the grade that they currently have. So that's why you want to make sure you have everything available, because the system's going to do the math of what is your grade at this moment as you completed the first 5 things, and then it also can, what is your grade if you did all of this and you never continued. So there's a variety of reasons why you want to have all your stuff in there. One way to get around that is that if you know you're going to have a final exam, you can make the column of a final exam, or make the shell of your quiz up, or whatever your assignment is, assign it 100 points, and then hide it from the students. That will still make a column in the Grade Center for you, so you could start doing your calculations. Hopefully this will all start to make a lot more sense as we go forward in the workshop. Know your weight or distribution, as I said before, and keeping it simple. Know your math. If you cannot do your math on paper and explain it very simply to a student, then you might want to rethink your calculations. And that's what I'd usually say. Please, one thing I think context-wise that I say to people is I come from a K through 12 background, and so I know how K through 12 works, and I know how higher ed works. And I think about how neither of these two environments really kind of engage or talk to each other. And in terms of, we don't actually really kind of think about how this 18 years affects this 6 to 10, 20 years. or 2 to 20 years. So the reason that I say that is that when a college student or anyone comes to college, the concept of weight grading or how they get graded is very different in from K through 12 environments. They usually don't get very complicated math given to them, and that they generally across the board, all high schools grade on the exact same schema, and the faculty don't do weighting and they don't do some of this stuff. You get 5 A's, that's an A. You kind of figure that stuff out. So there's not usually weighting to things. When we come here, every faculty member has a different math. And so that's the thing I always like to just kind of really point out, is that if you don't have a really simple structure that your students could easily do themselves to figure out their own grade on paper, you might want to just take a step back and look at yours. I'm just making that suggestion because I think that's a lot of the time where students are like, why did I get this grade? Some of it's that we don't actually instruct students on how grading happens in colleges or in college. And then every semester, like Danny just mentioned, he has this floating quiz 1 out there. Every semester, you should clean up your grade center. If you made like sample documents or played around with something, you're going to have occasionally extras or spare things like hanging out. You want to kind of clean up your grade center from semesters to semesters. Also, that when you start a class, if you're reworking an entire assignment and you make a new assignment up, you do want to remove that other assignment from your grade center. And maybe your class, remember when you're teaching a fully online class, every semester you get a new shell and we just copy the content from the previous class into the new class, or from your development shell into the new class. And we use that pre-existing class, the one that already was taught, as a record of completion for your students. So if you have incompletes or grade contentions, those shells stay as they are so that you have a record of the class. The next semester, you get a blank class given to you so that you can teach it and change it and make adjustments to it without affecting any student grades that already have been submitted. So there's some cleanup that some people, that we recommend people do. In terms of grading strategy, especially in Blackboard and the first time that you're going to be teaching, and Danny probably, all of you can probably, if you've used Blackboard just a little, I know Sheila, not as familiar, you want to consider making appointments with yourself to grade student work. Avoid grading on the fly if possible. Probably one of the biggest things. I really encourage people when you're grading, I tell people, if you're ever in a workshop with me, you have a facilitator hat and a grading or a managing hat. And so I like to be in my hat reading the discussions. I don't want to sit and think about what grade they're going to get. But after I've done read the whole post for the whole week, I can go in and sit and grade everyone because I have context, I understand. But I can't simply just come in and say, I got 20 minutes, I'm going to grade everybody. That's not how it's really going to work in an online environment. So I usually tell people, make appointments with yourself to grade. Know your tools. If you don't know the grade center that well, please always feel free to make an appointment with me, make an appointment with Scott or Mary. I know that usually Scott and I are kind of the more knowledgeable grade center math, like technical people. Mary is very aware of math calculations and all that as well. So, but feel free that if you don't know, rather than sitting being confused, just make an appointment with us. More than willing to meet with you. And then you can check what your students see in your your student preview. So every student in Blackboard has a view of their grades called My Grades. And when they click on it, they see their grades and all of the assignments available in the class. You as a faculty member can go into Blackboard and see a preview of what a student would see. And that lets you also see what the My Grades area looks like and what you're displaying to your students. Often before I start teaching a class, I will go there and I'll make sure that I have all of the assignments that I want them to see, and I make sure that they don't see the assignments that they don't want to see. And so that's kind of an easy check for me. I am a pretend student in my own class, but it lets me see what all the other students are seeing. And again, if you don't see any, one thing I always like to point out, students only see their grades. You are a faculty member with far more permissions in Blackboard, and so that means that you are seeing more of your class than your students are. Students can only see their own grades. They don't see the full grade center. They don't even see the bottom part of the course menu that says course management. They see none of that, so they will not see the grade center. And also, unless you've participated in your own class and played around in your student preview, you won't be seeing grades as well. So if you want to see what grades look like from the student perspective, feel free to participate in your own class under student preview, and you will be able to see, grades populate as well. Just be aware that before the class starts, you want to delete your own responses, because otherwise students see you as, I think, Krause preview user. They'll see that there. So that's kind of all the like technical stuff, or the like theoretical thought stuff. What I do want to do is kind of get started, and more specifically, like, let's just kind of dive into Blackboard. I usually I cover accessing Blackboard and how to log in. Everyone here is pretty familiar with that. So I'm going to go ahead and we're just going to start talking about grading in Blackboard. Now, every time that you make an assignment up in Blackboard, we call these auto-generating columns. What this means is that when you make an assignment in Blackboard, when you make a discussion in Blackboard, journals, any type of tests up, you have an option to say, make this item graded. When you make it graded and apply a point value to it, it automatically will create a column in your grade center that for that particular test, assignment, discussion, journal, whatever graded material in Blackboard it is. So you don't ever have to make a column up yourself. Now, much of the grade center, like I normally tell people, is think about an old school grade book, the old school paper where you open it up and you put the students' names in it, your assignments, and you went down the columns. The system will automatically make the columns for anything that is a graded assignment using a tool in Blackboard for you. But you also have the ability to manually make columns. You can make columns about participation. For example, I also make Google Forms. I use things that I want students to participate in, and then what I do is I bring that point value or that participation over to Blackboard, and I manually enter the grade into Blackboard. Some people, if you're doing clinical work, you're doing anything where you're doing observation, you would go ahead and you can do kind of attendance that way. But you can also say if they completed something, you can make a column up that isn't something they turn in or they complete in Blackboard, but you're going to have the ability to keep track of that. So you can have both auto-generated from Blackboard, and then you can have manual columns as well. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to go over quickly on the screen here, and then I'm going to actually jump into Blackboard and give you kind of an overview of Blackboard. But I want to just make sure I cover the environment a little bit. You're all familiar. There are 3 parts of the main course environment. The first part of the menu is going to be what we call the course menu, which on the screen is labeled as a number 1. It is the upper left-hand side of the screen. To the upper right-hand side of the screen, that's the course content area, and that is all of that is where students see their content for the class, where you see the content for the class. 1 and 2 are mostly viewable by students and faculty can hide various things on the course menu from students. Number 3, at the bottom left-hand side, that is your course management area, and that is only for faculty and people who have that role. Students do not see that area. So I also like to make sure you're aware of that, because again, when you see course management on the screen, you're going to see course management, and then you're going to see about 5 down, 1, 2, 3, 4 down, something that says Grade Center. And your Grade Center is your grade book for that particular class. To access the Grade Center, you can go ahead and click on the link, and then a menu will appear, and I'll go over what those various things are. And so let me switch over to Blackboard now so we can kind of go to that. Let me get into my workshop class and let me share that screen with you. Okay. And please let me know when I show the screen that it is visible to you, and hopefully it will work. Basic, okay. All right, so I am now sharing my class in Blackboard. This is a workshop class that I do, and so I normally, I am currently in a class that I am teaching in. I am an instructor. I have an edit mode, so I have my edit mode on. I have my student preview button here to the far left. So I'm on the upper right-hand side of the screen right now. I'm just making sure I am in a class and I am my instructor self. So I have my edit mode on, I have my student preview, and this is my class and my course menu. I'm going to go ahead and scroll down to my grade center, and I'm just going to go ahead and click on the link here. I now have several links of various things that will occur, and I'm going to cover all of these things and what they're like. So your grade center, if you just clicked on the full grade center, what will happen is you click on the link, and to the right, what will populate is your grade center. Now, this is a faculty class, so I have a handful of faculty who've been in this, messing around, kind of thing like that. From a previous workshop. So for most of you, you're familiar with this, is that you're going to have your last name, first name, in this case, I'm demonstrating the student ID in this class, last access, and availability. Availability is literally meaning that the class is available to the student or not available to the student. Now, when faculty attend workshops, I want to keep their materials that they tested for me, so I have some examples, but they don't need to see this class anymore. It's not something it was for practice. So most of the time you can, I'll explain to you that you're going to be able to hide things in your grade center. But for the most part, your grade center looks like a traditional grade book. You're going to have your students' names, and then you're going to be able, at the bottom of the screen, you're going to be able to scroll to see all of the assignments that have been created and generated in Blackboard. Now, as I said before, anything that has been created in Blackboard is automatically going to make a column for you. So for example, this is a quiz that I have available, and it just automatically made a quiz for my quiz 11, my sample quiz that's available. So my grade center has all of my columns, and some are going to be auto-generated just by the act of me making a column, and some of them are going to be manual. Now what I want to do is just kind of show you that this is just basically, this is your grade book. This is all the grades, all of the students. If I scroll down, continue into course management, and I have above full grade center something called needs grading. Needs grading is when you have an active live class and you have students participating, and say you've set yourself up that I want to maintain and I want to grade as I go. Not so much grade on the fly, like I got 10 minutes, I don't grade everybody, but you have a window of time and you want to start grading people. The needs grading window allows you to grade what has been turned in and filters out everything else. Filters out all other students and filters out what has not been turned in. Now, if I come here right now, these are all the 4 things that have been turned in between May and July. And so for me, this is just letting me know this is all the work that's currently in, and anything that hasn't been turned in, it does not display on the screen. So I could I could grade these 3 papers or these 3 assignments and this 1 test. So it's going to let me have a little bit of ability to grade what needs to be graded and not what hasn't been turned in yet. The cool thing about needs grading here is that you can sort by the categories that are available that have been turned in. You can also grade by all of the items in the class that have submissions, and you can grade by specific users. So you could separate out particular individuals of saying, and more than likely, most people want to say, I want to just grade one particular paper of the students who have turned it in. So if you have an assignment and a paper and a discussion going on, you would go ahead and see all of this in here, and you could select what items you want to grade. But again, this is only stuff that's currently being turned in. Students who haven't started or turned anything in, they don't get that displayed here. This is just really helpful for you if you don't want to be bogged down by seeing the entire grade center and go into the grade center and click on every single window. So this is just kind of letting you know that the needs grading area is for things turned in, and the full grade center is everything, whether they've turned it in or not. If you graded it, it displays all of that. So it's just like a regular grade book. Then what you'll see here are a couple things that are auto-generated by the system, which are called assignments, journals, and tests. I think it just says assignments and tests. And assignments, these are areas that are actually just designated all assignments in the class. So say I have a very long grade center and I don't want to see everything, I just want to see all of the assignments. I have the ability to have shortcuts to particular assignments, tools, groups, all sorts of things. And I'll cover that in a minute on how that works. But so I just want to make sure that the interface here is that needs grading is things that need to be graded. Full grade center is everything. And then there are buttons that are generated by Blackboard, and then you can generate some yourself as quick shortcuts. You can have a shortcut, for example, to the midterm and final exam. So there's a variety of things if you want to kind of create kind of shortcuts. And they're actually not called shortcuts, but I'm blanking right now on what they're really called. So I want to go ahead. So they're actually called smart views. So the ones you're seeing right now, assignments and tests are default, and I've made a journal one up and I've included that myself. And then also when you're in your grade center, again, you can, I only have amount of students that goes through the screen, but if I had more students in this class, I'd also have the ability to scroll down, up and down. So that's just to let you know that my grade center would be able to scroll left and scroll right, scroll left and right and go scroll up and down. Now for the grade center interface. The grade center, if I'm looking at the grade center and I have my columns have the names and all the assignments going straight down. If I go above that grid, I have a menu above that says create column, create calculated column, manage, and reports. I'm just going to briefly talk about each of these areas, and then we're kind of go really kind of in depth into the create column and manage area for the majority of this workshop. Create column just allows you to make one column where you can enter grades in. It does not feed from any tool in Blackboard, so it's not a discussion, an assignment, a quiz, but that's to create a column like the ones where I said a lab clinical, if you're using a Google form, if you want to have participation, that's how you would create a column that is not tied to anything in Blackboard like a tool, but this is how you would create manual columns. You would click on the create manual column. And I'll explain that in a second. Create calculated columns. This is when, and this is the more advanced features, are going to be when you're ready to make your calculations up so that Blackboard will be able to do the math for you. Now, the reason that you'd want to use, and for some of you who use the Web Advisor grade book, the Grade Center in Blackboard works almost exactly the same. What you want to do is you want to have all your assignments available and have a place where you're going to put grades in, and then you're going to want to do mathematical calculations. Blackboard is going to afford you the opportunity to have those mathematical calculations done for you. So if you're going to want to have a column that takes the average of all assignments, all tests, you can have an average column. If you want a column that determines that you want to pull out the minimum and maximum grade, you can have a column that does that as well. And then the two more popular columns that get used is a total column, which is the total points or the total grade for an entire column, or a weighted column, which then has the class and then you apply the percentage weight that you want to put onto it. So in Blackboard, you will automatically receive, I believe, a total column when you get your course shell. You might also get a weighted column, not sure, but you get those two automatically created for you, and they the total column automatically kind of starts to keep track of all of the total of everything that you're creating in Blackboard from the start. So these columns are going to be when you're getting ready to kind of do your math calculations for total grades. The manage section in the Grade Center, this is where you get to customize and personalize your Grade Center so that you can set up a whole bunch of different features to kind of make grading manageable. So I'll cover all of these in a moment, but I'm letting you know that not only do you have the ability to make mathematical calculations, you can set some things up to hide certain rows. You can make those shortcuts or smart views for yourself. You can make new categories up, and you can change a bunch of stuff up. So I'll cover that in a few moments, but I just want to let you know that's what the manage section. The manage section is now, I want to manage how I see the Grade Center, how my students see the Grade Center. I want to play a little bit more with things. You also have the ability in Blackboard to have reports. Reports let you pull down data so that you can do mathematical calculations, or actually reports are actually giving you specific data on students' grade history. It'll show you receipts of when people have turned things in, and then you can create kind of a manual report of of a particular student or different things. And again, I'll go over that in a few moments. You also have the ability to filter out different things in your grade center. I generally don't use this. I just keep my grade center as it is. But if I wanted to go ahead, I can always go ahead and filter and remove some things temporarily from my grade center if I wanted to do that. I'm going to go ahead and just close that filtering button, but the filtering just lets you eliminate some things in your grade center. Work offline. I do want to cover this one really briefly. The far right-hand button saying work offline. This allows you to download your grade center as an Excel document, or and when you open it up, it says, do you want it to be a comma delimiter or a tab delimiter? And do you want any hidden information, anything that you've hidden from your own view to be printed out? The cool thing about downloading the Grade Center is that if you want to do more complicated mathematical calculations, you can always just keep track of your grades and then download the reports yourself. What some people do is, like, if you're going on vacation or you're worried about your internet connectivity, if you're doing something where you're in a classroom and you want to keep track on your Grade Center on a report, you can download it in an Excel document and keep track on your laptop without having to open up Blackboard. You could technically print it out and write on that Grade Center, and then you can fill the Grade Center in later. Or what the Grade Center also allows you to do is then upload your Grade Center back in. You're not actually deleting it. I want to make sure that's clear. What you're doing is you're taking your Grade Center and you're downloading a file of an Excel version of your Grade Center. Your Grade Center still retains itself inside of Blackboard and as students are turning stuff in, but you can basically take a snapshot of your Grade Center, but it's in an Excel format that allows you to do further calculation or enter grades in there. Then you're going to be able to upload that if, say, you did do some manual grading or grading adjustments offline. So that offline feature is really helpful for faculty for a variety of reasons, but I do tell people, know what you're doing when you want to actually upload it back up, and that's where you can make an appointment with me or Scott, and we can kind of like talk about that a little bit further. I just wanted to let people know, like, I've occasionally done the download myself just so that I can have a whole printout and I can look at the screen differently than on the Grade Center. What I will tell you is that one of the most frustrating things about the Grade Center is that as you have a more complex class, and I'm going to scroll across, you're scrolling across a very large Grade Center, and it can get really daunting. And that's why some people kind of use the work offline just to kind of take a look at their Grade Center in another format. If I'm past that menu, I'm going to go down a little bit, and I have a series of buttons, and between the grid of the Grade Center and the menu bar that we have, you have the ability to move different people around, and I could move myself to the top. I have the ability to kind of just change different order if I want to do that. But if I also, on the actual Grade Center, just clicked on the name or the title, it would automatically sort it for me based on alphanumeric or, sort alpha A to Z or Z to A kind of thing. But I can also, for some reason, if I wanted to move a couple students towards the top of it, I could also move to the top, and that would temporarily put them there if I wanted that. I'm going to just resort that. I can also, inside of the Grade Center, email people. Now, why you would do this is because, say I come to this submit goal for this workshop, and I see here that I have a series of students that haven't done their work. I can always go ahead and click on the various students that don't have any grades in here, and I can email them. I can email the selected users. I can, observers are in other classes where there might be a program head or someone like, this is used for a lot of K through 12 stuff as well. So there's people who are like helping out in the class, and it's called an observer role. They're not teaching, they're just like in the class. Most of us are just going to select those users. And what that'll let me do is it'll open a window for me, and then I can write an email to my students saying, hey, I see that you haven't completed your work, really want you to get it done, and this is a reminder. So you can send emails out. These emails go to their stick address, so this just lets them go ahead and lets you kind of manage. If you're managing grading here, you can always just say, I see that you don't have those done. Um, Additionally, you can sort your columns in various different ways by categories, by date, due date, all of that stuff as well. And then you can also have ascending or descending order. So if I did descending order, it would go ahead and it should do that, so that when I click on this now, it's going to give me the reverse order. I just actually clicked on that. If I go ahead and click on this, it's always going to be, when I click on the title, it's always going to give it to me in ascending order. I can always change it to descending order right here.
Kyle, can I ask a question? Because I experimented with that one a little bit.
Okay.
I think it was on descending order, and I just, for the heck of it, checked ascending order.
Mhm.
I wasn't able to do that. It said you weren't set up for it. Does that sound like something that,
Um,
or do I have to do something before I can make that?
oh, so the system won't automatically. So what this is just telling me is that this is my preferred order when I
Right.
click on these titles.
Mhm.
So if I was using descending order and then I changed it to ascending, I'd still have to click the title to
Oh,
change the order.
okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And this is the default order. So I can always do descending. I can just click on the title to make it be ascending, descending. But my
Okay.
default is also always ascending unless I've already had it set to descending.
Wait,
Um, yeah.
do I have
Some
it
of this
right? Descending is from A to Z. Ascending is Z to A.
reverse. Ascending
Huh?
is so if this is on ascending order, this would be D through W, and then descending, right? Am I messing this up myself?
Um,
Right?
I'm not sure myself. Ascending, descending, I thought was A to Z.
If I do that, uh, I'm going to say on Friday afternoon or Friday morning, I'm already confusing myself. So
I'm
I thought,
confused all the time. Not just Friday.
anyone else wants to chime in there? I thought that I understood what it was till you just asked me that question. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll
But whatever it
clarify
is,
that.
it said I couldn't do it. So,
Okay, you should be able to change it up, and then it should make some adjustments. But I thought it just resets it. You also sometimes have to leave and come back to your grade center. Much like in Blackboard, if you make a big change to something, often you have to save it and come back in to refresh the page. You might want to do that. Otherwise, it doesn't always kind of refresh as it does.
I,
So we're gonna have the column area, we're gonna have those buttons, and then we're gonna go all the way to the bottom. And what we do have is where we had moved to the top, we have moved to the top at the bottom as well in email. The reason these two buttons are redundant is if I have a very long grade center and my page gets longer, I might be at the bottom of my screen. The way you go about doing that is that, say I have all of these students in here. If I go to the far right bottom, I have two things here. The first one I'm going to show you is edit rows displayed. The default for me is going to be 10. That's how many I have. And I don't have many students in my class, so that's the case. But say I have 25 students in my class and I want to be able to scroll through my entire class, I can click on here and type in 25 and it's going to show me all my students and I can scroll up and down. Otherwise, it's going to be set to that default 10 and I have to keep scrolling up. But if I wanted to have all of my students in the window and then scrolling, otherwise it's going to keep it locked here and it's going to make me have to scroll back and forth within that 10. If I do 25, my scrolling is through 25 rows versus 10 rows. Does that kind of make sense? Oh, I did see someone, I just got a little indicator for someone to join. Um, All right, so I do have this bottom row here that's available and I can always change what's displayed. And then my last thing is I have this thing called an icon legend. The icon legend tells me what all the buttons are that appear in my grade center. So for example, whenever someone starts to turn something in, I'm gonna get the exclamation point that says needs grading. I can always also just put my cursor over it and it'll give me a little text box that says needs grading. But if I see things in my grade center, and I'm trying to see if I have anything in here that's not I don't think I do. If I had any of my other icons here, I would get different, like, so for example, completed, column is not available to students. I would get different icons there, and that this little legend at the bottom tells me what that is. Hi,
Hey,
Holly.
Kyle,
Sorry, I didn't know.
no.
I just want to say hi to Holly, and sorry if I missed you letting you in just yet.
Oh,
Yes, Danny.
so the blue one means they're working on it?
Yes.
The test.
So you will see attempts in progress often when they are taking tests. That's probably the most frequent. What that is telling you is that the student has clicked on the link to start the submission process. And so that'll let you know that that you have to wait till they've hit the submit button, that you won't be able to go into that submission that they've turned in until they've actually submitted it into Blackboard. All right. Still making sense? And Holly, I'm recording this, so you'll be able to see the earlier part of it as well. And feel free to turn your mic on, which on Zoom is at the bottom. It's this side of your screen. There's a little mic button at the bottom. You'll be able to turn that on and ask questions. Feel free to ask questions as we go.
I have a question.
Yes.
It started at 10 o'clock.
It did. I started a few minutes after, and then I can't let anybody in when I'm doing some screen sharing, so I didn't see you.
Okay.
Yeah. So stay as long as you can. I know some people have to jump out, and then, like I said, I can catch you up. And I did start recording this. Okay. Okay. So that's going to be the layout of your grade center. What I want to do, and I want to make sure I'm just covering my little outline here, is what I want to do is just go over really quickly to show you what happens when you all do this, and this is just to be familiar. I am in my, I'm ready to make an assignment. And what I want to do is I'm going to come over into Blackboard. I'm going to come down to my quick link section, and I'm going to come into my assignment area. Now, some of you might put your assignments in different places, but this is where I put my assignments in Blackboard. I'm going to come to my assignments area. I'm going to go to assessments, and I'm going to come down to assignment. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to type here test assignment for grade center workshop. Okay. And then I would have my instructions for my students. And as you all know, I'd probably be cutting and pasting this from a course menu or a course map. I just like to make that plug in there. And so that's just to let you know I'd have my instructions in here, and then I'd have all my settings. And as I said, the moment that I assign a grade value to this, this will automatically create a grade column for me. So even if I just do this much and I don't do any of my other settings, I don't do my grade options, display of grades, I don't put a due date on it, any of that stuff, even if I don't make this assignment available to my students, when I hit submit, I will now personally see at the very bottom of my screen, it says test assignment for grade center workshop, and it says availability. This is hidden from my students. But by the act of making it a graded assignment, even if it's hidden from students, when I go into the full grade center and I take my mouse and I scroll all the way to the far right-hand side, I will now see a button that says test assignment for grade center workshop. My students won't be able to see this because the assignment's not available at the moment, or actually they won't be able to see the assignment. But this is now automatically generated for me. So when the assignment becomes available or I want to fill it out and make it available, the students will start to participate, and then they can go ahead and I'll start to see these exclamation points telling me that there's submissions available. So that's just basically whenever I create anything in an assignment, a discussion, a quiz, a journal, anything that has a graded assignment in Blackboard. But then again, I want to just create a manual column that, say, keeps track of Google surveys. So for example, I said I do some surveys outside of Blackboard in Google for my students, and I want to just Google survey 1 here. And then whenever you make a manual column up, it's going to say it's going to give you another name. Now you have the ability, so say, I always tell people this is like, you want to be careful how you name assignments, because you want your students to be able to say week 1 and then the title of the assignment. However, Blackboard, the column truncates to 10 to 10 spaces. So what happens here is that this is going to truncate to something like Google Serve. But if I have 4 surveys, I'm not going to know which of my surveys it is just on basic site. So what I can do is, and once a column is created, I can always come in here. I can make a shortcut title in my grade center. So say I wanted to just call this this is my abbreviation for Google. I just took the vowels out and I want to call this survey 1. This is just giving me a really quick identifier that this is survey 1, but what displays to the students is Google survey 1. But in my grade center, I have a nickname or a shortcut that makes it easier for me to identify them. Then all I have to do is I have to determine what do I want it to be. Is this particular manual assignment a score, text, percentage, letter, or complete or incomplete? A score is going to be an actual, score. Text is going to be, say you want to give them a comment like intermediate, feedback, just a word. I sometimes use these kind of columns for myself, major, what year they're in, what program they're in, and then I hide it from them. So this allows me to create an actual column that lets me track what discipline they're in, what track they're in, that kind of thing as well. When I was at UMass, there were the brain science department, which was psychology. The brain science department actually had 4 tracks. And so when we were training faculty, I wanted to be able to know what track they were in, because if we did workshops, I wanted to invite certain people in. So you can do the same thing for your students. You can make a manual column that is also just for you to keep track of some type of information for your students as well. As faculty, you also have the ability to do secondary display. So hypothetically, if I wanted this to be a score, 100%, but I wanted it also to show me their letter grade that would be complement, I can do that as well. So it will show me a score, and then it'll show me the corresponding letter grade with it. Now, remember I said that Blackboard already knows the stick grading schema, so that's where it's generating that letter grade from. So if I put in a 92, it's going to put in whatever the range is for a 92 based on the schema. This is for me to be able to figure out. And I usually tell people, I like primary and secondary displays because I like numeric values. But when I see a numeric value and then I see a grade, I can also tell if something's wrong with my grade columns, because that'll be an indicator like this student really should have an A, but they're throwing a B minus. So did I mess up a calculation in my grade center, or do I just have to be aware that they haven't taken something that is a significant grade, kind of thing like that. So I like to include both things because this just helps me know exactly where the students are at. I then can assign it points. So I can just, for this case, is say 10, because in my classes, I give 10 points out. And then if I had a due date for my own sense of when something is early or late, I would go ahead and put the due date on there, but for most manual columns. Now, in Blackboard, when you see columns now, you're going to see a thing called options. And if anyone has ever done my workshops, I always say that Blackboard has a lot of words for like availability settings and availability options. Options in the grade center, and it's in all columns, is include this column in the grade center calculations. If I say yes, the total column that I might make up in my class is going to automatically put this particular column in that total column. So if I'm using this column just to track participation and I don't want this column to be calculating for the total grade, I would actually not include this in my grade center calculations. I would just leave it as it is, and that total column just has other things in it. So include in the grade center calculations means that wherever the total column is, this particular column is going to feed into any type of grading. So if I just want this to be a column that stands out there for tracking purposes or participation and not necessarily grading, I would take it away from the system using it as something that's going to calculate a grade. Most people don't need to change that, but I do like to clarify that because sometimes if you toggle this on, you're like, what happened to that grade? Show students this column. This is Danny, where I said you can have a column in the grade center, and under the My Grades area, you could hide any column from your students. So if you had your multiple quiz ones, you could come into your quiz one column and hide it from the students. How do you know the difference between which quiz one? The one with all the grades, that's the one that's live. The one that they're not turning in, that's the one you didn't give to them. That's the one you should hide. I'll also show you where else you can hide this. The other thing that you have options is to show the statistics or average for this column to the students. It lets you do this for a total column, but it also lets you do it for every assignment. Now, I tell you that I honestly don't have any faculty who's ever toggled this to yes because of the conversation or because it's harder to explain to students. I don't know why, but this is going to tell the students what the average grade is for the class. So it's giving them the opportunity to see what the average student is getting in this class. And so they can kind of compare their grade to the rest of the class. Some people just don't go there. I think that's really the answer. I've never really delved into why people don't choose it, but it would open doors to a lot more conversations to your students. And if you want to have those conversations, you're allowed to do that. Feel free to do that. But I do know that a lot of faculty just choose no on that. So I've now made a manual column up. I've given it 10 points, and now I'm going to go ahead and click on submit again. Now, the one thing that I want to point out to you is that whenever you make a column, every new column that you make, let me go back into here, every new column that you make goes to the far right-hand side. So as you make assignments up, if say I make assignment, discussion, at the far bottom, I'm going to, for the far right, that's where the column generates. If I make all my assignments up, they're going to show up first and then all my discussions. And so they basically, every time you make a new column, it goes to the far right. I'm going to show you how to reorganize that in a moment. I'm always like, I'm going to show that to you in a moment. What I do want to show with you on these two different assignments right now is I created an assignment in Blackboard and I made a manual column up. When I put my cursor over the test, the title, not only can I sort it by ascending or descending, whichever one that is, but if you look right here, this thing called the grade information bar, I want you to just look at it on the screen. But when I put my cursor over the title, what shows up for that column is the points possible, what tool I used, the actual title of the discussion, and then how many students have submitted and how many attempts are in progress. It's a really quick way to just see very fast information about that particular assignment being turned in. So if I go to the one that says sample here, my sample test for random set has 40 points possible. It's a test. And 1 of 10 students has submitted, and it says here 0 attempts. So I don't have any attempts outstanding is what it's telling me. So anytime I scroll over and I put my mouse right on the title, that's what's going to show up for that specific. So it's giving me quick information about my column. That's also why here, when you see here where it says Google Survey 1, now it'll say on that, Google Survey 1 is going to say Google Survey 1. It's going to tell me that right there. But this is my abbreviation so that I can see it and identify it easier. But what's being displayed to students in the assignment area or the area is not going to be the same. Now, when you're in Blackboard and you're at the title, you'll see a downward arrow. The downward arrow next to the title is all of the settings for that particular column. This is an assignment, and when I click on that, the menu, and a menu shows up on the screen, that menu is specific to the assignment tool. And so this will let me do a series of different things for assignments. I can see the quick information. I can send a reminder to my students. The reminder tool is very cool, but it's very fast. So say right now, I have no one who's completed anything. Just by clicking this button and clicking send reminder, it will send a generic reminder to every student who has not submitted or gotten a grade for this assignment. I do nothing else. I just hit that button and everyone gets a notice. So the Thursday before Friday paper, I hit send reminder and they get a generic thing saying you haven't turned it in yet. I usually tell people, that's my moment where I make sure I've graded everybody, and then I hit that, and then I know that it's only gone out to people who haven't turned it in yet. And so I do that. But for some people, like they're like, oh, I kind of want to send an email out to each individual student. Well, you can send an email to individual students or write something out, but this is a generic message that goes out to students and you can't control that. But the minute you hit that button, it will send it out to everybody. You can also change your due date on any assignment immediately from this window right here. You can also grade the attempts. You can grade with the usernames hidden if you want unbiased grading. And then because it's the assignment tool, say you want to download all of your Word documents. You're going to be able to download all of the documents onto your desktop. You're going to also be able to do what's called a cleanup, which allows you to clean up any like straggler files or anything like that. And then you're also going to be able to see the history of the grades for your students. And then everything else around here is going to be editing the column itself, column statistics, setting this column as an external grade, which I'll cover in a second because I realized I did forget to do that. Hide this column from a student. So if I don't want my students to see in their My Grades this column, I can click this button here, and this will prevent the students from seeing it in their My Grades. So if I'm not ready for students to see this column, or I know that this is an assignment I'm no longer using, but I'm not ready to delete it just yet, I can always hide that from the students as well. I can also clear all of my attempts for all of my users, and I can sort ascending or descending, and then I can also hide this from my own view. This button you want to be careful for. You can always come back and get it, but where it says hide from instructor view, this will actually hide the entire column from you. Why would you do that? Some people have practice exams. Some people have things that they want students to do that they don't want to see in their grade center. And most of the time, you just want to hide it from your view so it's not impacting you seeing all of it. Some people will have exams that come from a textbook company that are optional. Or that they have to complete a certain amount of them, but they don't need to see all the grades for them. So that's why you would hide that. Once you hide this, it will not be shown in your grade center, and you'll have to, and I'll show you where you'll go find it in a few moments, but you'll have to go back into Blackboard into another place to show it. Go ahead, Danny.
Yeah, I got a question on their change due date.
Mhm.
Okay, let's say all the students but one don't turn in their quiz on time. They want more time.
Yep.
Can you go in and change it for one student?
Yes.
Okay.
So, but you don't do that in the grade center. If it's
Okay.
a quiz, there's a feature in the quiz tool that allows you to just allow that one student an exception or an extension. If it's any other tool, you have to use something called adaptive release to hide it from everyone else and just make it available to individual students. So if you'd go to the quiz, so you know when you're making a quiz and you have edit test and edit test options, you'd have to go to edit test options and go down to where it says exceptions. And then you'd enter that student's name in, and then you would uncheck the box that says, if you did not force complete, but if you did don't accept any tests after the due date, you'd have to uncheck that. It would hide it from all your other students because there's because the test is closed. But it would allow only that student a different range of time. And if you want to do that, we can walk through that at another time, or Mary can help you out with that. But I think you might have been the person she was asking me about that for.
No, I didn't mention that to her.
Okay, she was asking me about it the other day. So
somebody else probably had the same problem.
Yeah, it's very common.
Where is it? Where do you go originally?
Okay, in the quiz tool, you're going to go to edit test options, and you're going to scroll 3/4 of the way down, and you're going to see something called exceptions. And that's where you'll do that. And I'm pretty sure Seth has also done that before. So if you did have a question, the test tool has it built in. All other tools, you have to do something a little bit more tricky if you're trying to hide something from students. So I usually tell you to give us a call and check in with us, make a quick appointment, because that's where you can accidentally hide the whole thing by accident from everybody.
Okay, so you go to the quiz option?
Yes, you're going to go to edit test options.
Yeah.
And then you're going to open that up, and then you're going to go to exceptions.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so every column in the grade center is going to have these types of menus. So if I go to a test, I'm going to get a different set of options. I can have item analysis, which actually gives me statistical data on each question. I can view all attempts. I'm going to be able to grade just individual questions in my quiz. There's a bunch of different features. If you in the grade center, you come here and you click on the downward arrow next to the title of that column. So this is just to let you know. Now, I'm going to pause and just give you a heads up. I cover this in the grading workshop that we do at the end of the semester and the beginning of the semester. So whenever we have an overlap at the end of August and the beginning of September, I do like 3 or 4 grading workshops. I cover all of these in more depth with those workshops. So I'm not going to go too much more into it. What I did want to just show you is those pull down menus vary by the tool in Blackboard that you're using. If you make a manual column up, it's a much shorter column because it's not feeding from anything else like a quiz, like an assignment. It doesn't have any data. It's just a place for you to enter that in. Now, I have a bunch, so I have my columns. I've told you how to sort, organize, and then grading. That's another workshop. So we'll get into grading later on. But what I do want to cover now and make sure I covered everything. We created a column. I talked about totals, minimums. Okay. What I want to do is talk about probably the most important menu, the menu most people want more information about, is there's this manage column right here. The manage column, I always tell people, is people's best friend in terms of managing their grade center. It's very helpful. Now, the manage column is basically just helping you organize and sort your column out. And what I'm going to do is, I'm trying to think, the best thing to do is, I'm just going to cover briefly what each thing is, and then I'll talk you kind of through probably one of the ones that's like the most important. A grading period in your grade center allows you to do a break in all of your grade center. So a grading period basically lets you take all the assignments for a week and put them into one space, and all of your assignments and tests and quizzes into various weeks into different spaces. What this looks like is that instead of the grade, so the grade center will exist, but you can actually create an aesthetic that will say, I have a grading period that is week 1, and I'm putting it in the order of assignments, discussions, and quizzes. In the grade center and to my students, it's going to show up in that order for me. And I'm going to be able to see that, and that it's going to tell the students that's an actual period, like a week 1, a week 2. You can break it up into part 1 of the semester, part 2 of the semester. You can do a bunch of different things. It's just a way of sorting your columns, and grading periods allow you so that if you were doing something like at a school, it's actually really prevalent at schools that do like 7-week terms, where they might do like half the term is like 1 through 3, and the rest of the term is 4 through 6, and then you have 7 as your final. So some places have like bifurcated parts to the semester. So a grading period allows you to look at your class in kind of a broken up structure. The grading schema, and I'm just going to show this to you because there's no real reason for you to have to go into your grading schema. Your grading schema is that area that I showed to you that has the STC grading schema in it already. You don't have to touch this. You don't need to adjust this. This is the STIC grading center, the grading schema for the institution, and it's already set up, and Scott set that up for everybody. The one thing that you should see is you should only see one of them in your grade center. So if you see 2 of them, I would just check in with Scott. Most of the time, it just somehow copied it over, and to cause no conflict, usually you just delete one of them. It doesn't cause a big issue. Some people have come in here and made their own, not really understanding what a grade schema is, and that will affect your final grade calculations because this grading schema is really the class schema for all of your grades, and it needs to kind of be based on the one that's provided to students by STIC. In terms of coming back into the grade center, so grading periods just let you bifurcate your grade center up by windows, weeks or parts or units or whatever you want to have it. Grading schema is the grading schema for the institution. Color coding. Color coding allows you to put settings on your class so that when a student is turning something in, and I have to enable this, otherwise it's already on, it won't be enabled. I have 3 grading statuses: in progress, needs grading, and exempt. I can change the colors of all of these things in Blackboard to just show me an indicator of where people are at. So yes, I have all of those icons, but this will actually highlight the entire cell to tell me that I have work in progress, work that needs to be graded, and that if I've exempted a grade, it actually, in my class, I blacked it out. So I have to, that's just letting me know for some reason I exempted that grade, and it's a big like indicator for me. I then have the option to put little flags in my grade center that tell me when things, like, so for example, if I have a student that has a grade between a 66 and a 75, when I enter a grade or the quiz tool automatically enters the grade, I'm going to get an orange box or an orange cell. And this is going to give me a flag to tell me that my student is at risk. I can change the text color, and I can change the background color. So this one is orange and black, but say I wanted this to be, I wanted it to stay, I want white, or just I'll do yellow. Say I wanted the text to be yellow and this to be, I can change that out. I can also delete my criteria, and I can have as much criteria as I wanted, but it's always going to be based on values of the grades. So if, say, for example, less than 65, I get a red check mark here, I'm going to get a red box that tells me that. And so I can go ahead and highlight that. I can also create one that says more than 85%, and that one's going to give me a green. I'm just going to make it green. I wanted it green. Oh, sorry, I made it green, and then I'm going to apply. And so I'm going to get a green one. I might want to write to my students who are doing really well or did really well. And so this is going to give me a color indicator that tells me that. Now I realize my needs grading is the same color, so I'm going to change that up really quickly. Let me change that to fuchsia. There we go. Or magenta. Okay. When I hit submit here, and I've enabled it, now all of my columns start to get color coding. Now, from a visual standpoint, if color, like I was going to say, this is not helpful for Nancy Pickett, not helpful for faculty or anyone who has a visual acuity issue or colorblind. But if you're a faculty member who this would help me a lot, I now know I have to write to BB student and Kyle student, and I have to say, what the heck, what's going on? Help me out, let's talk, that kind of thing. But if I had a grade anywhere, for example, here, and this one was 100, I now get magenta, and I can tell the student, oh, great job, or whatever the case might be. So color coding allows me just to have a really easy like visual to that. The next thing I have available is going to be called categories. Now I'm going to go ahead and click on categories. Categories are automatically generated in Blackboard by tools. So if I make an assignment, all of my assignments are going to be tagged with a category called assignments. And you'll see here, I have a lot of assignments in Blackboard. I also have discussions, I have journals, I have tests, and every time I make something, it's going to assign it a category, a generic category in Blackboard based on the tool. But say I have weekly quizzes instead of a test, or I have a final exam and I have a test. I have the ability to create different new categories. So for example, if I wanted to create a category that was just called final exam, I can go ahead and click on final exam, and now I've created a file here that says final exam. I'm going to show you how you can change your categories in a moment. What this means is that when I'm doing grade calculations, if I have a final exam, I can apply a category that says final exam to it and remove it from the test or the weekly quizzes category, and it will stand alone as its own grading area. What that means is that say I have every week I have a weekly quiz. And so all of my weekly quizzes just get set to a category called test. That means that the system's just automatically going to total all of these up for me, automatically does it. but I don't want to include my final exam using the test tool in that calculation. By creating this final exam category, this is going to allow me to be able to separate out things that get made with the same tool, but I don't want them to be calculated in my grade center the same way. The weight of my final exam is going to be 50%, but all of my weekly quizzes are 15. I want to make a new category up if I'm using the same tool, but I actually have different weights based on quizzes, tests, like practice tests, those kind of things. Also, for example, I might have used the assignment tool. And most of the semester, I'm having people turn in papers. But I have a final presentation that I'm also going to have them use the assignment tool to turn in. I want that grade not to be associated with all of the general assignments that they've turned in. Is this making sense? Okay. So I have the ability to make my own assignment, my own category, my own categories up, but then I also have the ability to use the standard ones as well. The standard ones will always assign, so if I make something in the assignment tool, it's always going to assign an assignment, and then I have to make a separate category if I want to pull it out of that general institutional tool-based category. I can't delete anything that is made by Blackboard. So the assignment, blog, discussion, journal, self and peer, survey, test were made by Blackboard. Those are tool-based categories. These clinical, final exam, any of these, I can go ahead and I can delete them if I don't want them anymore. I can also edit them, but I can't edit the categories that were made by Blackboard. Okay, so I made up my final exam quiz right here. When I'm all done, once I've created it, I can just go to the bottom of the screen and say, okay, and it'll take me back to my grade center. So I've just made up a category. And so in the future, and I'll show you this in a second, when I make something up, I can change the category at any point. If I want to go to example, I'm going to come down here and I want my Google survey to actually be, it's going to be the final exam. I can come in here and I can edit my column information. And when you see here, there's a button that says category, and I can assign it any category I want. And so then when I do a calculation, when I go to do, I'm going to add up all my assignments to get my assignment category or feed into my total count, I can assign it any category here. Is this making sense so far? Okay. All right. Now, the reason that I would want to do that is I want to separate out the weights of the different assignments in there. I'm going to skip over smart views right now, but what I want to do is go, and I always tell people the column organization is going to be the area of the manage section you probably go to most. It doesn't do anything for you around grading, but what it does is, and I find this to be easier, is your frustration with the fact that your grade center goes from left to right gets alleviated here by clicking on column organization. And this at least shows you all of your columns top to bottom. So this is going to tell me, so column organization is how I reorder, how I rechange a category. It will help me figure out my total points possible and what points that I've made in a really quick view for all of my assignments, discussions, tests. And it'll also help me organize if I want to do what I call the grading period before. So here are all of my columns. And say, for example, I had that Google survey that had no column whatsoever. I can go ahead and click on that particular column. It still looks this way in that other window, but this is just a linear view. And I can come down here and I can hide it from myself. I can also change the category to call it final exam. It's going to come over here and it's going to change the category in the third column to final exam. So I can go ahead and automatically change that here. It's going to give me ability to put it into a grading period, which I'll cover in a second. Or if it's a manual column that I can delete, it'll allow me to delete the column right here. Also, it's a very quick way for me to be able to drag my column all the way up and put it anywhere. So if I wanted this column, the final exam, to be all the way at the top, This allows me to very quickly move my column all the way to the top of of my window, but it's going to move it all the way to the left in my grade center. And so if I want to reorganize these, for example, I reorganized all of my assignments to all be together. And then now I have another assignment. I want to move these assignments all together. I can do that as well. So it's allowing me to move things around, make adjustments. What I tend to use this area most for, when I have this menu bar at the top that says name, grading period, tells me my category, tells me my due date, tells me the date that I created it. So for example, Danny, if you had wanted to know which of those quizzes was the quiz you meant to delete, it would have told you which one was the one you did first and which was the one you did second. That would also be an indicator of which one you might want to delete. But I use this the most for points possible. This is a very quick view to make sure that I intended, for example, I have a sample quiz here. All of my quizzes are worth 100 points. When I come to my column organization, this lets me know that I have a quiz sitting out there that only has 70 points. I didn't finish it. I accidentally put the wrong point values on some questions. So this is just a really quick view of in my grade center that this is telling me that every assignment is supposed to be the exact point value that it's supposed to be. And so I don't know if that was intended, but I use that all the time. When I'm like somebody saying my calculations aren't working out or it's not totaling to 100, I always come to manage column organization and I look at that column. And I'll ask somebody, do you know that your weighted total is only 18%? Do you know that your midterm is 400? Is it supposed to be 400 at midterm? Is my final grade supposed to be 39? This is telling me there's something wrong with my calculations because all of these are calculated columns and all of these are my columns that they're feeding into. And so I've done something wrong either by point value or I need to fix my formula. So I use this column a lot of times to do a really quick check of my math and to see if I need to fix that first. Making sense? Okay. So column organization can be your best friend if you want it. You have two areas that are defaulted. This is the default that you see at the very beginning, last name, first name. You can't take away the last name and first name, but you can hide their username. You can hide their last accessed or their availability. And I can just click on that, come here and say hide columns. And then those, so all I'll see is the last day they signed into Blackboard because that might be all I want. When I'm done, I can go ahead and if I do any reorganization, and this is really, really important, if I do any reorganization, I have to hit submit at the bottom of the screen. And the reason I point this out is if you don't and you reordered your entire columns up and you don't hit submit, you just leave, you will lose all of that. And I have that, I'll be honest with you, that happens a lot. It's happened to me. I will be working, at UMass, I sometimes would be asked to fix someone's grade center and I would fix a grade center and I would spend like 20 minutes fixing it and I would just accidentally back out of it. I'd close the window. I don't know what I would do, but then I was like, oh my God, I just lost all that reorganization. Please make sure you go to the bottom of the page anytime you want to leave and either hit cancel or submit to confirm that's what you want to do. I'm going to go ahead and hit submit. And as I said before, if I go all the way to the far left-hand side, now you're going to see that I don't have, all I have is my last access here. And that my first thing was not my total column, but I had my Google survey. I hid my Google survey, so now it's hidden from my view as well. And I have all of these kind of highlighted buttons. Okay, so the next thing that I to talk about here is going to be row visibility. I have the ability to also hide particular students for whatever reason I want to do. So if I wanted to actually hide a bunch of students temporarily, if I had students, for example, I always tell people, I don't know exactly why you would do that, but you could actually hide these and then this would come up. This works more at a school where you can, now with the ILP and automatic grading, you don't see the students who are unenrolled. That was more of a feature, row visibility, when we didn't have that, or you're teaching a web assist class and you had people who unenrolled, but you didn't want to take them out right away because they were working on a, incomplete or whatever, but you wanted to clean that up. That's what you'd use row visibility for. I'm going to go ahead and just have them show all of them like I normally do. And now they're all back. Manage here is if you're using McGraw-Hill or Pearson MyLabs Mastering, there are special reports that do come up. So I don't have any attached to my class, but there'd be a window and it says here, I don't have this, I have an issue. This would actually take me right to my Pearson materials or my McGraw-Hill materials if I had that. I am not as familiar with these two buttons, mostly because at other schools we used other tools. But this is available, and if you have questions, your rep can help you, or Scott and I can try to figure something out. But you do need something being attached to Pearson or McGraw-Hill. You have to have a class on their side to be able to use these features. I do know that much. I'm going to go back. Now, the last things that I think I have to show you. Okay, I want to go back to grading periods. So remember when I said I have a grading period here and there's no grading periods. And what I want to do here is I want to create a grading period that indicates to myself and to my students that I want to show everything that's due in week 1. So I'm going to make a week 1 grading period. And I can choose no period in terms of dates, and then I can manually put everything that's due in week 1 there. Or if I have due dates, I can actually select the start and end dates of where things should be pulled in. So if I have due dates, it's going to pull in everything from one start to one end. And then I have to click the button that says associate this grading period with all columns that have a due date in this range. So I'm giving it a range, and then I have to check if there's a due date on there, it's going to pull it in. I personally don't do that, mostly because I like the manual process of me manually pulling up my columns. I don't know why. I trust Blackboard instinctively for a lot of things, but this one, I personally, just because it's grading, I like to do it myself. This works perfectly fine, but I just let people that I tend not to do ranges, and I just manually pull my own stuff in. I also do a lot of non-tool based assignments. I do my Google surveys and I do other things outside. I have students work in Google Docs. So I have a lot of manual columns that don't necessarily have due dates on them. So it's not as helpful for me as well. But so I'm going to create a grading period that says period 1, and I'm going to hit submit. Now, once I've created a grading period, and I'm going to say create 14 of these, I'm going to come back into my grade center, and I'm going to come back down to manage column organization. Now, when I create a grading period between that first area, the institutional area, and the regular columns, I now see a week 1. What I can do now is I can go ahead and I can just drag. I think this isn't going to let me drag it in. I can just drag it in. So I now can see in this view all of my weeks, and I'm just going to grab a couple of things in here. So I'm going to put a couple of things in. Quiz, I can do that. I also can just come in here and say paper 1 is due. This test is due. And then I can come down all the way to the bottom and change grading period to week 1. Oh, it says I didn't select a column. Oh, did I already do it? And now they're all in there. So I can either drag it up or I can do that. Why I would do a grading period, I'm going to do submit, is 2 things. Now, I know for certain these are all the things I just dragged up. They're now going to be in sequential order by week. Then what I have the option to do is I've created this week order. I can come in here to manage, and now I'm going to go to this cool thing called Smart View. And I click on Smart View, and I come in here, and I'm going to create a Smart View. And what I want to do is I want to call this week 1, 2. And I'm going to come in here, and I am, I always have to remind myself, by category. Is it category or I always have to remind myself on this one. Nope. Availability. So a smart view, before I forget, I don't want to not cover this. These were the smart views. And Holly, I think you jumped in after this. Smart views are shortcuts in Blackboard that allow me to look up specific things. So I now have a smart view that's assignments and journals and tests. But say I want to have a performance-based one, that what this is just going to do is take me to a particular column or sets of columns. So the grades on this particular test, if I want to actually have a specific user, I can go ahead and select, I'm going to actually select preview user Kyle. If I select that person and I want all of the columns that are available, and I hit submit, and I scroll down here, there is now going to be, where is my, oh, I called it week 1. Oh, that's not smart of me. I go like this and hit OK. I now have a week 1 shortcut or smart view at the bottom. And when I click on that, it's going to load. And in this case, I think I chose the wrong one. It would show me normally, I think, Kyle. And I'm in there. But it would show me that week 1. I didn't need to do that one. So I'm going to go ahead and come back into Smart Views. I'm going to come into Create View. I actually want to edit my week 1. I want to edit this one. And in this case, there's category and status, and I have the ability of what's been completed. I have the ability to choose what users. I have the ability to do a custom one, and I can add criteria. So it's going to let me make a shortcut to anything, particularly here. I'm going to go ahead and do cancel. Oh no, I want to course group view, all columns, group equal to, I'm going to just go through these. I know I can do this somehow. All columns, grading periods. Okay, so I'm going to come to performance, or I'm going to come to course group. Let's just do course group. This is, let me find, sorry. That's what I'm sorry. I'm confusing myself right now, which is going to confuse you. So I want to, for example, have all columns, and I want to select a particular grading period, and I'm going to select week 1, which was my grading period that I had available. And I'm going to go ahead and it says equal to that week. And I'm going to come in here, and now I have this smart view available. I'm going to make it available and do OK. And now I have a particular student that I see when I click on this one. So this is all of the material for this particular group for week 1-1. And so that particular student and anyone in that group, I'm going to see all the assignments for that particular group. So you have to play a little bit with smart views, but what smart views do is just give you shortcuts to different things. So that's pretty much, for the most part. The last thing I want to cover is, just because this is also becomes, and I want to actually just, and all you have to do is click through. So like if I come to assignments, this is all of my assignments in Blackboard. Nothing else but my assignments. If I want to go to my full grade center, I can always just go to my full grade center and I can play around with this. The one thing I do want to do is just cover the 3 last things. Is I want to come back to column organization. I want to make sure that my total column here, I actually want to have, a grading period. Let me just cancel all that. I just want to make sure that my, I have my grading period, and then I have my final exam. Here we go. So I have a final grade summer 20, and then a midterm grade summer 20. And then I have a weighted total column. So I can have as many grade-based columns as I want. I can have columns that add up all the discussions, add up all the assignments, add up all the quizzes. So I can see their quiz grade, their assignment grade, all separate. Or I can just do a total of all of them and have the weights automatically applied. There's a variety of different things that you can do. What I do, and a lot of people might do, is do a midterm and a final grade. So I have a grade that is displayed here, and this is the grade that up until the midterm is displayed to my students, because I want them to get from week 1 to week 7. I want them to know what their grade is up until midterms. The reason that I do this is that I have heavier weighted grades at the end of the semester. And when I'm doing my calculations, students always see that they're not doing as well because it's calculating all of the final grades like that. So I personally like to have a midterm column just to say, this is what you got before midterms. And then once midterms are done, my calculation is midterm, including everything after midterms as well. So this is going to start calculating everything in the grade center. This is just everything from the beginning till halfway through the semester. There's a very cool thing in Blackboard that was started last year. It's a feature that's very common at a lot of schools, and it's called the ILP, or Integrated Learning Platform. But basically, it's the grade sync that you can do with WebAdvisor. So if you're maintaining a grade center in Blackboard and you want your grade center to just you can upload your grade center from Blackboard into WebAdvisor. You don't have to manually enter your grades in. You're going to select a final column, and then what you want to do is you're going to select what's called your external grade. Your external grade is the column that process is going to feed from. So for example, at midterm, I'm going to have, and you'll see it says set as external grade. You can only have one external grade column in the entire grade center. When I do that, that little check mark comes here, and that's the column that this is going to feed into, and it's going to let me upload into WebAdvisor. So I would do that. And at midterm, then I come in here and I set external grade to my final. And like I said, you can only have one. So when I come here, you don't have the option to set to external because it is the external grade. You can only switch it out. You also can't delete a column that is an external grade column. The system won't let you do that. Right now, I don't have the ability to delete it because it's telling me it's a very important column. What I can do is delete this column because it's not. So that's just to let you know, that's why you don't see the delete button when you have it selected as your external grade column. So I have my external grade column here. This is just letting me know this is where the data is going to feed from to go to WebAdvisor. And then what I would do normally is there's actually under tools, there's a thing that says ILP integration. And when I do that, it's going to say ILP home, midterms, final grade, last date of attendance. I click on midterms, and now you'll see it took all of the grades that I had in my midterm, in the column, which was, I think I chose the final column. It chose my final column, but it feeded it into the midterm because that was my external grade. So I can always change this grade for whatever reason and make an adjustment. And if the student is failing, I have to put the last day of attendance. Now I can't go any further because otherwise, the WebAdvisor isn't open for this and I don't want to mess this up. But what'll happen is that if I have an F and I don't enter a last date of attendance, I'm going to get a flag and not go any further. The system won't let you do that. So, but because your grade center is on another page, I usually tell people, make sure you just note down the last date of attendance because sometimes that won't feed in. You have to manually enter that in. It'll let you go back to your full grade center through this window and you can look at it really quick, but then come back in here and just click on this as well. You can keep uploading to the ILP even after if you made a mistake or made adjustments, you can do that as well, but you always have the ability to go into WebAdvisor and manually change a grade at the window in WebAdvisor as well. So this isn't a one and done thing. So the ILP doesn't necessarily automatically send it. You have to manually do that. And to be honest with you, as a faculty member, I don't want something automatically syncing without my permission. I want to say, oh, yep, those were the grades my students got. Oh, yep, good, I'm good. and I'll submit these grades to WebAdvisor. So it gives you your authority to say, yeah, or for example, if you have a student turning in work and you're bumping their grade or doing whatever, you know, you're making adjustments, you know something's happening in the midterm grade, whatever that case is, you would make those adjustments there. So that's just to let you know you have the ability to do that for reporting that as well. Like, so I know that at midterm, I had a student who I know was literally turning in everything that they owed me, but I would have had to report an F, but their last date of attendance was just a couple days. I was sitting there going, okay, I'm gonna wait and enter their grade once I do some grading. But in this case, like I was making my adjustment manually in the grade center. So that's gonna be a really cool feature there for you. So that's gonna be the grade center. In a very broad overview, these are just all the features that you can create columns, manage, do that as well. And like I said, I will be doing an advanced on just creating calculated columns probably next week or early the week after, just for people to be able to start putting their formulas together. But for now, I wanted to do a workshop where we just covered the basics of the grade center. You got familiar with it, you saw all the features to it, and you can say, I do or don't want to do certain things as well. Any last questions?
Yeah, Holly, you came in late. When I put the earphones on, it's because the dog starts barking. See, like it's my, you know, my daughter Mary. It's he starts barking. I gotta. So I have to. But anyway,